That formula won't work. Dr. Darlene Wilson, now reduced to waitressing, spoke softly as she placed coffee before laughing venture capitalists. Silence engulfed the gleaming conference room built where her biochemistry lab once stood. Dr. James Reynolds froze mid-pitch, his $150 million presentation derailed by coffee service. Your enzyme chain collapses at body temperature, she continued, eyes steady. Degradation begins at carbon-12, not carbon-14. Blood drained from Reynolds' face before anger replaced shock. Stick to serving coffee, he sneered. Science requires credentials. 3 months later, Darlene Wilson returned to that same room, her 7-year-old daughter's tiny hand in hers, medical monitors beeping in rhythm with the child's heart. Before them sat a sample of food waste so toxic it had killed every lab rat exposed to it. What would happen when her daughter consumed what these powerful men had called impossible? Darlene's hands didn't shake as she balanced the tray of coffee mugs. 5 years of serving the elite had steadied her grip, even as rage boiled beneath her calm exterior. The grand ballroom of the Breakthrough Innovation Center gleamed with polished marble and technological splendor. No trace remained of Wellington University, where she'd once been the youngest doctoral candidate in biochemistry. The same wealthy investors who'd closed her school now sipped coffee she poured, planning their next profitable ventures. Our enzymatic formula will revolutionize food waste processing, Dr. Reynolds continued once she'd stepped away. His PowerPoint slide showed molecular structures she recognized immediately. With Nutritech's proprietary process, we can convert toxic agricultural byproducts into safe, nutritious food supplements. Darlene positioned herself by the service door, listening. The formula was elegant but fundamentally flawed. It wouldn't just fail, it could potentially create new toxins at human body temperature. Dr. Victoria Harmon nodded approvingly from the panel. The woman who'd stolen Darlene's dissertation now headed Nutritech's research division. Beside her sat Alexander Blackwood, the venture capitalist who'd rejected Darlene's scholarship application 15 years ago for lacking potential. "Any questions from our expert panel?" the moderator asked. Before she could stop herself, Darlene spoke. "That formula won't work." Conversations halted. Heads turned toward the waitress in the standard-issue black uniform. "Excuse me?" Reynolds' voice carried equal parts surprise and disdain. Darlene stepped forward, the weight of her lost future propelling her. "Your carbon chain sequencing is backwards." "And you know this how?" Harmon asked, not bothering to hide her smirk. "The degradation begins at carbon-12, not carbon-14, Darlene explained. At body temperature, your enzyme will break down before it can process the toxins. Reynolds' professional smile tightened. "I have 3 PhDs and 20 years of research experience." "And I have your coffee," Darlene replied evenly. "But the chemistry doesn't change based on who observes it." Laughter rippled through the room. Not with her, at her. "Security," Blackwood called. "Please remove the help before she disrupts our serious discussion further." A guard approached, but Darlene stood her ground. "Your formula will fail. People could get sick." "Send me your resume if you're such a genius," Reynolds called, triggering more laughter. "Oh, wait, you'd need credentials first." As the guard escorted her out, Darlene caught Harmon whispering to Reynolds. Their eyes followed her with something beyond dismissal calculation. In the kitchen, her supervisor waited, arms crossed. "Mr. Blackwood wants you gone, permanently." Just like that, jobless. Again. Darlene's tiny apartment felt emptier than usual that night. Her daughter Zoe's cough echoed from the bedroom they shared. The chronic respiratory issues from their years living near Nutritech's processing plant were flaring again. "Mommy? Did you get fired because you're too smart again?" Zoe asked between coughs. Darlene smoothed her daughter's hair. "No, baby. I got fired because they're not smart enough." After tucking Zoe in, Darlene pulled out the locked box from beneath her bed. Inside lay her past, a half-completed dissertation, academic awards, and Professor Thompson's final notes. The brilliant biochemist had mentored her until his sudden suicide. The official story claimed depression after repeated research failures. But Darlene knew better. His breakthrough enzyme work had been stolen, just before Nutritech filed suspiciously similar patents. She spread the papers across her small kitchen table. Thompson had been close to solving the carbon chain stability problem, the very issue Reynolds' formula ignored. Combining his notes with her dissertation work could create something revolutionary. Not just a working formula, but proof of what they'd stolen from her and Thompson. A text message lit up her phone. "I saw what happened. I believe you. Meet tomorrow? Dr. Keisha Johnson, Food Safety Commission." Hope flickered for the first time in years. Maybe someone was finally willing to listen. Darlene met Dr. Keisha Johnson at a small cafe far from the Breakthrough Center. The young food safety inspector looked barely 30, with keen eyes that missed nothing. "I recognized Professor Thompson's enzyme theory in your correction," Keisha said after introductions. "I studied his work in graduate school, before it disappeared from academic journals." Darlene's guard remained up. "Most people think he was a failure." "Most people believe what they're told." Keisha slid a folder across the table. His work on enzymatic detoxification was groundbreaking. Then suddenly, all his funding dried up. Inside the folder were printouts of academic papers, Thompson's early work, and suspiciously similar Nutritech patents filed months after his death. "How did you get these?" Darlene whispered. "I have access to regulatory submissions. The similarities are obvious to anyone familiar with Thompson's research." Darlene traced the familiar molecular diagrams. "He was my mentor. We were close to solving the stability problem when Wellington University lost its funding." "Lost it? Or had it redirected?" Keisha raised an eyebrow. Blackwood Ventures pulled support from 12 research universities that year. Each had promising projects that mysteriously resurfaced under corporate patents. The realization struck like physical pain. They didn't just steal individual research. They dismantled entire institutions to harvest their innovations. Keisha nodded. "And they're about to secure $150 million to commercialize a flawed formula that could harm people." Memories flooded back Darlene at 22, the youngest PhD candidate in Wellington's history. Professor Thompson beaming as she presented her dissertation proposal on enzyme stabilization in hostile environments. Then James Reynolds, her boyfriend at the time and a postdoc researcher, growing distant after she shared her breakthrough. The mysterious laboratory break-in where only her research notes were taken. Victoria Harmon, the visiting professor who suddenly published similar findings. "I had to drop out when the university closed," Darlene explained. "My father died that year. My mother got sick from the chemical plant near our home." "Nutritech's plant?" Keisha asked. Darlene nodded. "The same. Strange coincidence, isn't it? I promised my mother I'd finish our research someday, but I had no lab, no credentials, no proof. And a child to raise," Keisha added gently. "Zoe was born a year later. Her father disappeared when I told him I was pregnant." Darlene's mouth tightened. "Between hospital bills and rent, science became a luxury I couldn't afford." Keisha studied her. "Yet you recognized a complex enzyme error immediately." "I never stopped studying." Darlene hesitated, then pulled Thompson's notebook from her bag. "And I have this." The worn journal contained Thompson's handwritten notes, his final work before his death. Pages of calculations, molecular diagrams, and a partial formula. "He gave this to me the night before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should complete what we started." Keisha's eyes widened. "This is the missing piece. His suicide note mentioned destroyed research." "It wasn't destroyed, just hidden." Darlene turned to the back pages. "And I don't believe he killed himself, not after giving me this and telling me to be careful who I trusted." The final pages contained something unexpected medical data, chemical analyses of soil and water samples, cancer clusters mapped around Nutritech facilities. He was building a case against them, Keisha whispered. Environmental contamination. Darlene nodded. The same contamination that killed my mother, and is now making my daughter sick. She turned to the very last page. Thompson's final notes outlined a modified enzyme that could break down the specific toxins Nutritech released into the environment. This isn't just about a food waste formula, Darlene said. It's about cleaning up poison they've been spreading for years. Why didn't you come forward before? Keisha asked. With what proof? Against which powerful enemy? Darlene's laugh held no humor. A black single mother without a degree, accusing 3 industry titans of intellectual theft and environmental crimes? Understanding dawned in Keisha's eyes. But now we have Thompson's notes, and their flawed formula about to go public. Darlene closed the notebook. Even with this, it's my word against theirs. I need irrefutable proof that works in plain sight, something they can't dismiss or bury. You mean finish the formula? Without a lab? Without funding? I've been working on it for years in my kitchen. Darlene allowed herself a small smile. You'd be amazed what you can accomplish with pressure cookers and food processors. Keisha leaned forward. The Breakthrough Challenge has a public testing phase in 3 months. Anyone can submit innovations for review by an independent panel. They'd never let me near it. Not as Dr. Darlene Wilson, maybe, but as a general applicant with a working formula? Keisha's expression turned determined. I have access to testing equipment at the commission. Not much, but enough to validate basic principles. For the first time in years, Darlene felt the familiar scientific excitement stir within her. Not just the challenge of solving a complex chemical puzzle, but the possibility of justice. 3 months, she repeated. To perfect what Thompson and I started 15 years ago. And perhaps, finally, to make those who destroyed their lives face consequences. Darlene's kitchen had transformed over the past month. Mason jars lined the counters, each containing different stages of enzymatic reactions. A borrowed microscope occupied the small dining table. The refrigerator held more culture samples than food. Is this safe, Mom? Zoe asked, peering at a bubbling solution. Completely safe, Darlene assured her. These are good bacteria, like in yogurt. They're helping build our special enzymes. Zoe's understanding of her mother's work had grown alongside the experiment. The enzymes that eat bad things and make them good? Exactly. Darlene adjusted the heat under a makeshift water bath. Like tiny recycling machines. Today marked their first significant test. Keisha would arrive soon with a sample of contaminated agricultural waste, similar to what Nutritech claimed their formula could detoxify. The doorbell rang, bringing not just Keisha, but an unexpected visitor. This is Maya Thompson, Keisha introduced the young woman. Professor Thompson's daughter. Maya's resemblance to her father was striking, the same thoughtful eyes and quiet intensity. She carried a weathered cardboard box. Dr. Johnson told me what you're doing, Maya said. I found these when clearing out my father's storage unit. The box contained research journals dating back 15 years, the missing records of Thompson's work. He didn't destroy his research, Maya explained. He hid it in plain sight, labeled as old family photos. Darlene's hands trembled as she opened the first journal. These fill all the gaps in his notes. He knew they were after his work, Maya said. The night before he died, he called me talking about chemical configurations and carbon chains, things I didn't understand. The same night he gave me his notebook, Darlene whispered. Keisha set a sealed container on the counter. We should focus on the present. This is contaminated wheat bran from a farm near Nutritech's northern facility. High concentrations of their industrial byproducts. Darlene nodded, suddenly all business. We'll need to document everything. Photos, videos, samples at every stage. She set up her phone to record, then walked through her process like the scientist she'd always been. Initial contamination testing shows high levels of organophosphates and heavy metals. Our enzyme complex targets these specific molecular structures. The kitchen became a laboratory. Darlene moved with practiced precision, measuring compounds and adjusting pH levels. Years of mental rehearsal translated to confident movements. The key innovation is the carbon-12 stabilization, she explained, adding a clear solution to the contaminated sample. Professor Thompson's original work focused on preventing enzymatic breakdown at varying temperatures. "And your contribution?" Keisha asked, taking notes. "A modified protein shell that protects the enzyme core until it encounters specific toxins." Darlene mixed two solutions together. It remains dormant until needed, then activates only in the presence of target compounds. The mixture began to change color, from murky brown to increasingly clear amber. "It's working," Maya whispered. Darlene checked the timer. "Faster than expected. The reaction should take 4 hours, but we're seeing changes within minutes." Keisha prepared testing strips. "Let's check toxicity levels at 15-minute intervals." As they worked, Zoe watched from her small desk in the corner, drawing pictures of Mommy's magic potion. Her presence reminded Darlene exactly what was at stake. The first hour passed with promising results. Toxicity levels dropped steadily as the enzyme complex broke down harmful compounds. "This is remarkable," Keisha said, comparing before and after readings. "You've achieved in your kitchen what Nutritech's million-dollar labs couldn't." "The difference is motivation," Darlene replied. "They want profit. I want justice." By hour 3, the transformation was undeniable. The final sample showed toxicity reduced by 87%, far beyond what any commercial process had achieved. "We need to run this through proper laboratory analysis," Keisha said. "I can take samples to the Commission's facility tomorrow." Maya studied the results with her father's analytical intensity. "What happens when Nutritech realizes you've succeeded where they failed?" "They'll try to discredit me. Or steal this, too." Darlene carefully labeled the samples. "Which is why we need irrefutable public proof." "The Breakthrough Challenge," Keisha confirmed. "Applications close next week." Darlene hesitated. "They'll recognize my name immediately." "Use mine," Maya offered suddenly. "Submit under Thompson. It's fitting since it builds on my father's work." "And it might get past initial screening," Keisha added. "Once the formula proves itself, your identity becomes secondary to the results." Darlene considered the strategy. "We'd still need final testing with human-safe applications. Theory and lab samples won't be enough." "What about food?" Zoe piped up from her corner. "You said it makes bad food good." The three women turned to the child. In her simple understanding, Zoe had identified their perfect demonstration. "From the mouths of babes," Keisha smiled. "A food waste reclamation test would be compelling and accessible." "And directly challenges Nutritech's claim," Darlene added, new determination filling her voice. "Let's get to work." The Breakthrough Challenge application went through under Maya Thompson's name, with Darlene listed only as a research assistant. Their submission, enzymatic reclamation of contaminated food waste, earned them a spot among 50 semi-finalists invited to the preliminary demonstration phase. 2 weeks later, Darlene stood in the service corridor of the very hotel hosting the semi-finalist reception. She'd taken a temporary catering position to gather intelligence and remain invisible to Nutritech executives. "Tray of appetizers to the Meridian Ballroom," her supervisor instructed. The Meridian Ballroom, where Reynolds would be unveiling Nutritech's groundbreaking formula to potential investors and fellow semi-finalists. Darlene adjusted her uniform and pushed through the swinging doors. Reynolds commanded attention at the front of the room, his presentation displaying familiar molecular structures. Too familiar. "Our proprietary enzyme complex has shown remarkable stability across temperature ranges," he claimed, pointing to data charts. Unlike conventional approaches, our formula begins the carbon chain restructuring at position 12, not 14. Darlene nearly dropped her tray. Those were her modifications adaptations she'd made to Thompson's work over the past month, improvements that appeared nowhere in Nutritech's previous research. Tests show toxicity reduction of up to 82% in contaminated agricultural samples, Reynolds continued. 82%. Their kitchen test had achieved 87%. The correlation couldn't be coincidence. At the back of the room, Darlene spotted Keisha in professional attire, her expression tight with controlled anger. Their eyes met briefly before Darlene continued circulating with her appetizer tray. She positioned herself near a side table where Harmon spoke with Blackwood. "The Thompson submission is using remarkably similar pathways," Harmon was saying. "Maya Thompson must be related to that professor who killed himself. The one who accused us of stealing his research before conveniently dying?" Blackwood swirled his champagne. "Keep an eye on their demonstration tomorrow." "Already arranged." Harmon's smile held no warmth. Their samples might experience some unexpected degradation overnight. "And if that's not enough," Blackwood added, "I've had my team investigating this research assistant they've listed. Seems our former waitress has been busy." Darlene's blood ran cold. They knew. She finished her service circuit and slipped away to text Keisha. "Compromised. Meeting now." 20 minutes later, Darlene, Keisha, and Maya huddled in Keisha's hotel room. "They've stolen our formula improvements," Darlene explained, "and they're planning to sabotage our demonstration samples." "How could they access our research?" Maya asked. Keisha's expression darkened. "My office computer. It has to be. I documented our test results there." "And they know who I am," Darlene added. Blackwood mentioned the former waitress. Maya paced the small room. "We should withdraw. They're too powerful." "No." Darlene's voice hardened. "That's exactly what they expect. What they want." "But our samples—" "We'll bring new ones, prepared tonight, transported separately." Darlene's mind raced through contingencies. "And I have something they don't." She pulled out Thompson's original notebook and turned to the final pages. "The stabilization catalyst. I held it back from our notes, kept it only in my head. Without it, their copied formula will degrade exactly as I warned in the beginning." Keisha nodded slowly. "So at tomorrow's demonstration—" "Their formula fails while ours succeeds." Darlene allowed herself a grim smile. "But we need absolute transparency. Multiple witnesses, continuous video documentation. I can bring commission colleagues," Keisha offered. "And I'll contact my father's former students," Maya added. "Many are in research positions now." Darlene considered their limited options. Still not enough. They'll claim bias or technical errors. Her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor. "Zoe's coughing worse. Coming home?" The image of her daughter struggling to breathe crystallized Darlene's resolve. "We need irrefutable proof," she said finally. "Something so compelling they can't dismiss it." "What could possibly meet that standard?" Maya asked. Darlene took a deep breath. "A human test subject, live, during the final demonstration." "That's too dangerous," Keisha protested. "The ethics committee would never—" "Not for a stranger," Darlene clarified. "For me and for Zoe." Silence fell as the implications sank in. "My daughter is already sick from their toxins," Darlene continued. "Our formula can help her, I'm certain of it." "You'd risk your own child?" Maya whispered. "No." Darlene's eyes flashed. "I'd save her and expose them. All at once." Morning brought chaos. Their demonstration samples had indeed been tampered with, not subtly destroyed, but entirely replaced with colored water. A clear message: we can reach anything you create. "They're not even trying to hide it," Keisha fumed, as they assessed the damage in their assigned demonstration booth. Darlene remained focused. "Doesn't matter. We prepared for this." Maya arrived with a small cooler. Fresh samples, prepared in my hotel bathroom at 4 a.m. Nobody knew I was even in the building. They had 30 minutes before their scheduled demonstration for the preliminary judges. Across the exhibition hall, the Nutritech team commanded attention with professional displays and uniformed staff. Dr. Reynolds has requested a schedule change, an event coordinator announced, approaching their booth. Nutritech will present immediately before your slot. Another tactical move attempting to overshadow their demonstration with corporate spectacle. Fine, Darlene agreed, her calm exterior masking strategic calculation. We'll be ready. As the coordinator left, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses approached hesitantly. Excuse me, are you Maya Thompson, Professor Thompson's daughter? Maya nodded cautiously. I'm Dr. Lin. I worked with your father at Wellington before. He glanced around before continuing quietly. Before everything happened. May I speak with you privately? While Maya stepped aside with Dr. Lin, Darlene and Keisha prepared their demonstration. The conversation lasted only minutes before Maya returned, her face alight with vindication. Dr. Lin has proof, she whispered urgently. Email exchanges between Reynolds and Harmon discussing how to acquire my father's research, dated 2 weeks before the university's funding was pulled. Why come forward now? Keisha asked. Guilt, Maya replied. And he's retiring next month. They can't hurt his career anymore. Darlene absorbed this new information. Can he testify? Better. Maya held up a thumb drive. He kept everything. The emails, meeting recordings, even drafts of the patents showing how they incorporated my father's work. For the first time, they had documentary evidence of Nutritech's scientific theft. But it wasn't enough. Corporate lawyers could dispute electronic records or claim they were fabricated. They needed the irrefutable proof of their formula working where Nutritech's failed. Reynolds' demonstration began with practiced charisma. Today, we show how Nutritech's EnzyClear process transforms agricultural waste into safe, nutrient-rich food supplements. The audience of judges, investors, and media watched as his team processed contaminated grain samples through their proprietary system. Testing strips showed toxicity reduction, and Reynolds confidently consumed a small amount of the processed result. Completely safe, he proclaimed to applause. As they packed up, Reynolds passed their booth. I'd wish you luck, he said quietly to Darlene, but it seems your samples have suffered an unfortunate accident. Don't worry about our samples, Dr. Reynolds, Darlene replied evenly. Worry about your carbon chains. His smile faltered slightly before he moved on. What did you mean by that? Keisha asked once he was gone. The stabilization catalyst he doesn't have, Darlene explained. His formula will begin degrading within hours. Anyone who consumed that sample will experience mild symptoms by evening. Including Reynolds himself, Maya realized. Sometimes, Darlene said, the best evidence is time. Their preliminary demonstration proceeded without interference. While smaller than Nutritech's presentation, their results spoke volumes. The judges noted the higher toxicity reduction rate and superior nutritional preservation. Most impressive, the lead judge commented, especially coming from independent researchers. They advanced to the finalist round scheduled for the following week, as did Nutritech, despite Darlene's prediction about their formula's instability. That evening, Darlene returned to her apartment to find Zoe's condition worse. Her breathing came in labored wheezes, her small body burning with fever. I think we need to go to the hospital, her neighbor said, concern etched across her face. The emergency room doctors ran tests, their expressions growing increasingly serious. These toxicity levels are unusual, the physician said. Has she been exposed to industrial chemicals? We live near a processing plant, Darlene explained, holding her daughter's hand. Well, something has triggered a severe inflammatory response in her lungs and liver. The doctor reviewed the test results. We're seeing markers typical of organophosphate exposure, Nutritech's primary chemical byproduct. Can you treat it? Darlene asked, struggling to maintain composure. We can manage symptoms, but identifying and removing the source of exposure is critical. Darlene spent the night beside Zoe's hospital bed, her scientific mind connecting dots that formed an increasingly disturbing picture. The timing of her mother's cancer, the respiratory issues in their neighborhood, Thompson's environmental research before his death. Morning brought Keisha and Maya, both shocked by Zoe's condition. The hospital ran toxicology panels, Darlene told them, her voice hollow. The chemicals in her system match Nutritech's waste profile exactly. We need to get you both relocated immediately, Keisha insisted. No. Darlene's refusal was firm. We need to stop the source. Maya placed a laptop on the bedside table. Dr. Lin sent more files. You need to see this. The documents revealed a systematic pattern. Nutritech had been dumping undertreated chemical waste for 15 years. Thompson had compiled evidence of cancer clusters and documented cases of childhood respiratory illness in neighborhoods surrounding their facilities. The last entry is dated the day before his death, Maya said quietly. Among the files was a spreadsheet tracking legal contingency funds allocated for specific neighborhoods, including Darlene's. Each area had an assigned risk level and maximum settlement amount should residents file claims. They knew, Darlene whispered, rage building beneath her clinical observation. They calculated exactly how much suffering was acceptable against their profit margins. But the most damning document was an email exchange between Reynolds, Harmon, and Blackwood from 15 years ago, discussing both Thompson's environmental research and Darlene's enzyme stabilization work. The Wilson girl's research solves both problems, Reynolds had written. Her stabilization technique could neutralize our waste issue and create a marketable product. 2 birds, 1 acquisition. Acquisition had never meant hiring her. It meant stealing her work while systematically dismantling her academic future. Another email outlined their strategy. Pressure the university's funding, ensure Darlene couldn't transfer elsewhere, and acquire her research through Reynolds's relationship with her. The final blow was a recent message from Harmon. The Waitress problem has resurfaced. Her child's medical records show elevated toxicity levels that could complicate our regulatory approval. Options? Blackwood's response chilled Darlene to her core. Standard procedure. Offer relocation package with NDA. If rejected, discredit through usual channels. They had poisoned her community, stolen her work that could have prevented it, and now viewed her daughter's illness as a liability to manage. The monitor tracking Zoe's oxygen levels beeped steadily in the background as Darlene absorbed these revelations. This changes our approach, she said finally, her voice steady with newfound clarity. The breakthrough challenge isn't just about scientific validation anymore. What do you mean? Keisha asked. They've been searching for an enzyme formula that neutralizes their toxic waste without admitting its existence. Darlene stroked her sleeping daughter's forehead. Our demonstration will expose both their scientific fraud and environmental crimes simultaneously. That's a dangerous escalation, Maya warned. They poisoned my child. Darlene's words carried quiet, resolute fury. They caused my mother's death. They drove your father to suicide. There's no more room for caution. She pulled out Thompson's notebook and began making rapid calculations. I'm modifying our formula for the final demonstration. We'll need samples of actual Nutritech waste, not just agricultural byproducts. How will we get that? Maya asked. Darlene looked up, determination hardening her features. From the source. Tonight we're going to their processing plant. The moral lines had shifted. This wasn't just about scientific recognition anymore. It was about justice for her daughter, for Thompson, for every family affected by corporate calculation of acceptable harm. Security at Nutritech's processing plant proved minimal. A company confident in its legal impunity rarely expects direct investigation. Dressed in dark clothing, Darlene, Keisha, and Maya collected effluent samples from discharge pipes emptying into the neighboring watershed. Document everything, Keisha instructed. photographing each collection point with GPS coordinates. Chain of custody is critical. Darlene filled specialized containers with the oily waste. This matches what's in Zoe's system. I'm certain of it. Back at Keisha's laboratory, they worked through the night analyzing the samples. The results confirmed their worst suspicions. Levels of toxic compounds far exceeding legal limits, matching exactly the profile found in Zoe's blood work. This is enough for an environmental investigation, Keisha noted. Investigations can be buried, Darlene replied. We need public, undeniable proof. For 3 days, they refined their formula to target Nutritech's specific chemical signature. Darlene barely slept, dividing time between Zoe's hospital room and the laboratory. The modified enzyme complex shows 94% neutralization efficiency, Maya reported after their final test run. It's even better than we hoped. Darlene stared at the results, a plan crystallizing. For the breakthrough demonstration, we'll need 3 sample types. Agricultural waste like everyone expects, their actual effluent and... She hesitated before continuing. And a biological sample showing active toxicity. You mean blood? Maya asked, alarmed. Mine and Zoe's. Darlene's voice remained steady. Proof that their chemicals are in our bodies. Darlene, that's too far, Keisha protested. Using your child as evidence. I'm not using her. I'm fighting for her. Darlene's eyes flashed. She's already part of their experiment without consent. At least this way, her suffering serves a purpose. The morning of the final demonstration brought unexpected news. Nutritech had requested a format change, a head-to-head comparative test between their formula and the Thompson submission. They're confident, Maya observed worriedly. They've reformulated based on what they saw in our preliminary demonstration, Darlene explained. But they still don't have the stabilization catalyst. The Breakthrough Challenge final was structured as a media spectacle. 10 finalist teams would present before a panel of expert judges and a live audience of investors, with proceedings streamed globally. As they set up their demonstration station, Darlene noticed Reynolds watching her. His confident smile didn't reach his eyes. A last-minute addition to our judging panel, the event coordinator announced. Dr. Victoria Harmon of Nutritech, recognized authority in enzymatic processing. Another attempt to control the outcome. They're stacking the deck, Maya whispered. Darlene remained focused, arranging their samples methodically. Doesn't matter. Truth doesn't require their permission. Zoe arrived in a wheelchair, accompanied by her doctor. Still pale but breathing easier after treatments, she smiled weakly at her mother. Remember what we practiced? Darlene asked, kneeling beside her. Zoe nodded. I drink the special medicine you made and the bad stuff leaves my body. That's right. Darlene hugged her gently. You're the bravest scientist I know. Across the demonstration floor, Reynolds noticed the child with visible surprise. He conferred urgently with Harmon, both glancing repeatedly toward Darlene's station. They hadn't anticipated this level of confrontation, a mother and child standing as living evidence of their corporate malfeasance. Places everyone, the event director called. We begin in 15 minutes. The ultimate test was about to begin. Lights brightened across the exhibition floor. Cameras focused on the main stage where the challenge moderator welcomed a global streaming audience. Today, our finalists demonstrate innovations addressing global food security, she explained. Our special comparative demonstration features Nutritech's EnzyClear process against the Thompson reclamation method. Darlene stood calmly at her station, Zoe's wheelchair positioned beside her. Their table displayed 3 sets of samples, each labeled clearly: agricultural waste, industrial effluent, and biological impact. Reynolds approached the moderator, speaking urgently. The woman frowned, then made an announcement. Nutritech has raised concerns about the Thompson team's demonstration involving a minor. Our ethics committee has determined the child may remain but cannot participate in any consumption demonstration. a tactical objection, attempting to block their most compelling evidence. Darlene stepped forward. My daughter will not consume any substances. She is present as living evidence of environmental contamination from Nutritech's facility, which our formula addresses. Murmurs spread through the audience. The moderator looked uncertain. Perhaps we should begin with the standard agricultural samples, she suggested. Reynolds regained his composure, launching into a polished presentation. His team processed contaminated grain through their system, displaying before and after toxicity readings showing 85% reduction. EnzyClear transforms agricultural waste into safe, protein-rich food supplement, he concluded, offering processed samples to the judges. Darlene's turn came with less theatrical flourish but methodical precision. The Thompson method approaches enzymatic reclamation differently, she began. Our formula contains a stabilization catalyst that prevents degradation at varying temperatures. She processed identical grain samples, achieving 92% toxicity reduction. The judges noted the difference, but the margin wasn't dramatic enough to be conclusive. Next, we'll demonstrate application to industrial waste remediation, Darlene continued, moving to the second sample set. Reynolds interrupted. The challenge parameters specified agricultural applications only. The submission guidelines allow for related applications demonstrating formula versatility, Darlene countered, quoting the rules precisely. The lead judge nodded. The demonstration may proceed. Darlene uncovered containers of the effluent collected from Nutritech's discharge pipes. These samples were collected from watershed areas surrounding Nutritech's processing facility. Reynolds stepped forward again. That's proprietary material obtained without authorization. Actually, Keisha interjected, presenting her Food Safety Commission credentials, these were collected under regulatory sampling protocols from public waterways. The judges conferred briefly before allowing Darlene to continue. Her hands moved with confident precision, combining the effluent with her enzyme complex. The audience watched as the dark, oily waste gradually transformed, separating into clear water and concentrated solid matter. Our formula isolates and neutralizes specific toxic compounds, Darlene explained, testing the processed water, reducing contamination by 94%. Dr. Harmon examined the results with visible disbelief. This level of specificity isn't possible without prior knowledge of the exact chemical composition. Precisely. Darlene held her gaze. Knowledge we gained through analyzing blood samples from residents living near your facility. She moved to the final sample set. Which brings us to our third demonstration. The room fell silent as Darlene uncovered vials of blood labeled with her and Zoe's names, collection dates, and medical record numbers. These samples contain elevated levels of organophosphates, heavy metals, and proprietary chemical compounds specific to Nutritech's production process. Her voice remained steady. The same compounds found in their improperly treated waste. Reynolds paled. This is outrageous. You can't possibly link these health claims to our operations. The chemical signature is unique to your facility, Darlene replied. As Dr. Harmon just noted, such specificity isn't possible without exact composition knowledge. She processed a small amount of her blood sample through the enzyme complex. Real-time analysis showed the toxins binding to the enzymes, becoming inert and separable from the blood plasma. Our formula can neutralize these compounds even within biological systems, she explained. Something Nutritech's process cannot achieve. Reynolds attempted another objection, but the lead judge raised her hand for silence. Ms. Wilson, you've been presenting as part of the Thompson team, but your knowledge suggests direct involvement in this research. The moment of truth had arrived. My name is Dr. Darlene Wilson. 15 years ago, I was a PhD candidate at Wellington University, working with Professor Thompson on enzyme stabilization technology. She displayed her old university ID beside current documentation. Our research was stolen when the university lost funding. That same technology appears in Nutritech's patents, filed shortly after Professor Thompson's death. Gasps rippled through the audience. Camera operators zoomed in on Reynolds and Harmon, capturing their reactions. "These are serious accusations," the lead judge said. "With serious evidence," Darlene replied, nodding to Maya. Maya connected Dr. Lin's thumb drive to the presentation system. Documents appeared on screen emails between Reynolds, Harmon, and Blackwood discussing the acquisition of Thompson's and Wilson's research, followed by medical data tracking illness patterns around Nutritech facilities. Professor Thompson discovered Nutritech was contaminating communities with undertreated waste, Darlene explained. Waste that our original enzyme research could have neutralized. She turned to Zoe, whose breathing remained labored despite hospital treatment. Instead, they buried our work, continued polluting, and calculated lawsuit settlements as acceptable business expenses. Reynolds abandoned professionalism entirely. "You can't prove any connection between our operations and random health issues." "Actually, we can." Keisha stepped forward with her own documentation. "The Food Safety Commission has been mapping chemical signatures from patient samples against industrial discharge patterns. The correlation is statistically irrefutable." For the final demonstration, Darlene displayed 2 enzyme formulas side by side, Nutritech's and her own. Watch what happens when both are subjected to human body temperature for 60 minutes. Under the heat lamps, Nutritech's formula gradually separated and lost efficacy. The Thompson-Wilson formula remained stable, continuing to process toxins. "Their formula fails exactly as I warned 3 months ago," Darlene concluded. "The carbon-12 degradation makes it ineffective in real-world conditions." The evidence stood clear and undeniable. Science had spoken with the one voice no corporate power could silence. The exhibition hall erupted with questions. Security personnel moved to flank Reynolds and Harmon as journalists pressed forward. The moderator called for order while the judges conferred urgently. Into this chaos stepped an unexpected figure, Dr. Samuel Chen, head of the International Biochemical Standards Organization. "As a late addition to the judging panel, I've observed these demonstrations with particular interest," he announced, his authoritative voice cutting through the commotion. "The IBSO will independently verify all findings presented today." 3 lab-coated assistants began collecting samples from both demonstrations, carefully documenting the process. "Full transparency is essential," Dr. Chen continued. "Both formulas will undergo blind testing at 3 separate facilities. Results will be published within 48 hours. Reynolds attempted to object, but Blackwood, appearing suddenly at his side, whispered something that made him fall silent. While the judges deliberated, medical professionals examined Zoe. The lead physician addressed the panel directly. "I've reviewed this child's medical records. The chemical compounds in her system match exactly the profile demonstrated in today's samples. From a medical perspective, the correlation cannot be dismissed as coincidental." Dr. Chen nodded. "The IBSO has been investigating similar cases near industrial facilities globally. This evidence will be incorporated into our ongoing research." After 30 tense minutes, the lead judge returned to the microphone. "In light of today's unprecedented developments, the Breakthrough Challenge final decision will be postponed pending complete verification. However, preliminary assessment confirms the Thompson-Wilson formula demonstrates superior stability and efficacy." She turned to address Darlene directly. "Dr. Wilson, your evidence regarding research appropriation and environmental impact extends beyond this competition's scope. We've forwarded all materials to relevant regulatory and legal authorities." The validation felt surreal after 15 years of silence. Darlene knelt beside Zoe, who asked softly, "Did we win, Mom?" "Yes, baby. Truth won today." Within hours, independent verification began confirming their findings. Environmental protection officials arrived at Nutritech facilities with sampling equipment and court orders. News outlets ran special reports on corporate scientific theft and environmental justice. Most significantly, 3 major research universities announced they would review all patents developed after acquiring research from closed institutions, directly challenging the practice of harvesting innovations through financial strangulation. Dr. Chen presented his organization's preliminary findings at an emergency press conference. The Thomson-Wilson enzyme complex represents a breakthrough in environmental remediation, he stated. Our initial tests confirm 94% efficacy in neutralizing industrial contaminants, including those found in affected communities. He looked directly at the cameras. More importantly, this case exposes how critical innovations can be suppressed when profit motives override scientific integrity and public health. For the first time in 15 years, Darlene felt the weight of disbelief lifting. Not just personal vindication, but systematic acknowledgement of a truth too long buried. Science had spoken. And finally, the world was listening. The following weeks brought seismic shifts across scientific and corporate landscapes. Nutritech's stock plummeted as investigations expanded. Reynolds and Harmon were placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. Blackwood Ventures faced investor revolt and regulatory scrutiny. But more meaningful changes emerged beyond individual accountability. The National Science Foundation established the Thomson Integrity Protocol, new standards requiring transparent documentation of research ownership when institutions close or transfer intellectual property. Universities nationwide adopted blind review processes for innovations, evaluating submissions without demographic or credential information. Most significantly, the Environmental Protection Agency launched the Community Science Initiative, empowering residents near industrial facilities with testing resources and direct reporting channels to regulatory authorities. For Darlene personally, vindication came in multiple forms. Wellington University posthumously recognized Professor Thomson's contributions with their highest scientific honor. His research was officially credited in all related patents, with royalties directed to educational scholarships. The university also formally awarded Darlene her long-delayed PhD, acknowledging the institutional failures that had derailed her career. 3 prestigious research institutes extended job offers within days. But the most meaningful outcome concerned Zoe, a specialized treatment program using the Thomson-Wilson enzyme therapy showed promising results for children affected by industrial toxins. Zoe's breathing improved steadily as her body cleared the accumulated chemicals. 6 months after the breakthrough challenge, Darlene stood at a podium addressing the first graduating class of the Community Science Fellowship, a program training residents from environmentally compromised neighborhoods in basic research and monitoring techniques. Science isn't just for those with credentials, she told them, echoing Reynolds's dismissive words but transforming their meaning. Science belongs to everyone affected by its applications and its absence. In the audience sat Maya Thompson, now directing her father's posthumously established research foundation, and Dr. Keisha Johnson, recently appointed to lead the EPA's new Environmental Justice Division. Also present were former Nutritech employees who had become whistleblowers after the breakthrough revelations, contributing crucial documentation to ongoing investigations. The most dangerous phrase in science isn't "I don't know," Darlene continued. It's "that's not my department." When we compartmentalize knowledge, we enable harm through deliberate ignorance. The transformation extended beyond policy into culture. A documentary about Thomson's research and Darlene's journey had catalyzed public conversation about whose knowledge counts and whose suffering matters in scientific advancement. Corporate practices faced new scrutiny. Quarterly earnings calls now routinely included questions about environmental impact and research ethics. Investment firms developed metrics for evaluating scientific integrity alongside financial performance. Most powerful was the emerging network of community scientists, everyday people equipped with testing kits and training, creating an unprecedented monitoring system that corporations could no longer evade. As for Nutritech, its facilities underwent comprehensive remediation using the Thomson-Wilson process. The company emerged from bankruptcy reorganization with new leadership and a transformed mission: environmental restoration using the very technology they had once suppressed. The $150 million originally intended for their flawed formula instead funded community health clinics in affected neighborhoods, with specialized treatment for chemical exposure victims. Darlene now led the Inclusive Innovation Institute, developing environmental remediation technologies while mentoring scientists from underrepresented backgrounds. Her office displayed two framed items: her belated PhD certificate and her old Waitress nameplate. Both represent valuable knowledge, she would tell visitors. One recognized by institutions, one dismissed by them. Both were necessary for truth to emerge. The case entered scientific ethics curricula nationwide, a cautionary tale about power and a hopeful example of persistent truth eventually finding voice. For Darlene, watching Zoe breathe easily while playing in formerly contaminated soil, now safe for children, this was the real measure of success. Not personal vindication, but transformed systems that protected vulnerable communities through transparent science and accountable innovation. If this story moved you, don't let the impact end here. Subscribe to Beat Stories and hit the like button for more powerful narratives about overlooked heroes finding their rightful place in the world. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these important stories of courage, vindication, and social change. Join our community today and be part of the movement to recognize brilliance wherever it exists.